Hi, I'm Andrew Samonsky, and I'm very excited to be here.
Before I get into more specific parts of your work, I'm going to ask you some more general questions just about you and your life and all that, because that's kind of what I like to start with. And usually what I ask people is, growing up, what did you want to be? And I'll preface this by saying that I heard you say that you were not a theater kid growing up, and I know you started out in opera and you studied that first before going into acting. So but when you were a kid, what did you want to be?
That is a good question. I don't I don't know if it was ever clear to me. Um, and and maybe I've said this story before too, but I think I was maybe a sophomore or junior in high school. I was so unclear about what direction I wanted to head that my parents had me take a series of kind of career tests, aptitude tests to see what might be a good fit for me. And I, as my dad likes to say, which is true, I flatlined on everything when I came out. Like all the careers was like doctor, lawyer, chef, whatever. It like just flatlined, and at the very bottom was musician, and it was off the charts. And no one ever brought it up. Like no one even addressed it. It was just like, well, that's not something you actually do. But no one even said that. It was just like we didn't even talk about it. And I just stared at this line, like literally went off the charts. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And we just never even talked about it. So so clearly that should have been a focus, but it wasn't really until after my freshman year of college. Um, but like, but as a kid, I don't know, I was a shy kid, like you said, and I wasn't a natural performer, so that was just never on my radar. I don't know. I just thought I'd do something that kids are supposed to do if they want to be successful. Like there was a moment in middle school I thought I'd be an ophthalmologist because it sounded cool. Like you work with lasers and eyes, and of course every kid after they saw Top Gun like me wanted to be a fighter pilot in the Navy. So,
Yeah.
but none of it was ever very serious until yeah, until college. So went into college undeclared, undecided, and um, and then things finally shifted. So.
Did you listen to music growing up? Like did you play music? Because I mean, you got this outstanding that you'd be a musician. What type of music did you listen to growing up? Was there anything that inspired
Oh
you?
my gosh. It's so interesting. I mean, yes, music. Loved music. It was like my saving elixir of things that felt like kept me sane. Because I was just kind of a very fearful, sensitive child. Um, and my parents loved music. And interestingly, growing up, you just kind of listen to what your parents listen to. My dad
Yeah.
just listened to a lot of oldies, like 50s music. And my mom loved musical theater, and my dad loved musical theater too. So, and we'd go see shows, in the area, and and I would sing in my mom's church, like in the children's shows. And then a friend of the family was a voice teacher, so I'd take some voice lessons, but not very seriously because I was such a shy kid that it wasn't like I wanted to perform. But I loved listening to music, and so then I've gone through many different genres. I mean, middle school was a big like um, rap and like uh, rap stage, and then once I got to high school, suddenly it was punk and like punk rock, and I was in a punk band for a while. And we did okay. We like opened for bands like Sublime and some really big punk bands in the
Wow.
on the West Coast, and uh, and I you know and then I got into like 60s, 70s rock, like classic rock and Grateful Dead. And I went through a huge 90s grunge phase of Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
I'll always have a sweet spot for Pearl Jam. That was like my jam was the Pearl Jam, and Eddie Vedder was the voice of the gods to me. This kind of just wailing baritone rock voice.
Such a good voice.
That was kind of my voice at the time, so I think I identified a lot with him, and of course the very angsty, just teenage themes that they were singing about. I identified a lot as this kind of awkward, uncomfortable, shy teenager. So Pearl Jam really spoke to me. And I was in a kind of a regular, more kind of rock band for a little bit too. We sang some Pearl Jam and blues, but but yeah. And so it wasn't until college that that same voice teacher, friend of the family, pushed me into going into a voice program, classical voice program, and that kind of really started my path. So yeah.
Well,
But I had a very varied, like diverse music kind of CD collection growing up for sure.
seems like it. I had read about the punk band, but that's so cool. Um, and you mentioned that old voice teacher, who I'd heard you talk about that on a podcast, and how the letter that you received like from her changed your life. And also
Hmm.
correct me if I pronounce any of these names wrong, but you also talked about Marona Delaney and Craig Carnley. What other people or mentors have inspired you over the years? You can also talk about any of the people I mentioned as well.
Yeah, yeah, Marana Delaney is correct, and then it's Craig Cornelia. He was, uh, yeah, Marana's still my voice teacher today. I found her in grad school, and she made me a tenor. Thank goodness, because it made my career. And then Craig is a very kind of well-known uh, teacher in New York
Hmm.
uh, who I who I took with. Many professionals did, and he was the one who really like uh, what's the term? He just really helped me understand clearly that I didn't have to be reveal anything more than myself.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us performers we try to be what casting or whoever's casting the show wants us to be. We're trying to be like the person who's done it before. If we're going in for that show that's been done, oh, we're going to do it like the original people or the people we've seen do it on the bootlegs or the recording or the whatever we've seen. Like that's how it should be done. That's how I'm going to try to do it. And there's some value in obviously understanding the history of a show and who's done it, but
Yeah.
but Craig really uh, nailed nailed the idea that it's really just about revealing yourself, like in the circumstances of the show or similar circumstances of the show. This is the kind of very like substitution Uta Hagen method, um, but through song, and it really just opened up everything for me. Um, and also just that idea that your strengths are valuable, but like your own weaknesses, shames, fears, things you don't like about yourself are equally valuable
Hmm.
as an artist, as a performer, and you have to be courageous enough and willing enough to reveal it all,
Yeah.
and and that can be a very scary thing at first, but then once you kind of go through it, you find it's a very therapeutic thing. Um, because you realize so many people are connecting with you revealing these things, and you realize, oh, I'm not alone in these feelings. First of all, second of all, it's someone's connecting with them, and they're feeling some kind of catharsis connection um, with what you're doing, what you're revealing. That's very powerful. I think it's why we do what we do. So so yeah, that he was an extremely powerful teacher for me. Um, and as far as others, yeah, I mean, I had a couple acting teachers in undergrad. I was a music major, a voice
Yeah.
major, but I realized opera wasn't quite the best fit for me, or at least I was more interested in maybe going into musical theater,
Hmm.
and I needed more acting training, and so I took started taking some classes. This is at Cal State Northridge, from a couple acting professors, Peter Grego and Linda DeVries, and they were both instrumental in helping me get into grad school, first of all for acting, and just nurturing that love for acting, performance, and giving me the confidence and support to say, no, I think this is something you can do. Um, so they were instrumental, and I'm still in touch with all of these people. Um, I mean, teachers are just by far the biggest angels in my life, and hopefully in most people's lives. So they were instrumental. It's interesting. As far as teachers, yeah, I've had so many great teachers. I had another one in undergrad, at Cal State Northridge. It was just a general ed class. It was an English class, and it was a Shakespeare class, and we must have read 10 to 15 plays that semester. And my friend and I, we would read them, listening along to kind of the BBC cassette recordings of like just famous like British actors doing Shakespeare at the height of their powers, Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi, um, and we'd read along, and 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 so I got very kind of concentrated knowledge of Shakespeare and fell in love with that, and just loved writing essays about Shakespeare. And I think that kind of helped fuel my love of language, and
Yeah.
obviously helped my performance, craft. So that was another one. He was just a really exciting teacher. Anyone that can get you excited about a subject, uh, is just really special. It's you don't realize like how much a teacher has to do with whether you get interested in a subject or not.
Hmm.
I feel like any subject can be interesting if it's and exciting if it's presented in the right way. Um, so it's why I like listening to like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, and how beautifully he communicates, science and astrophysics and just things in general. He's kind of a brilliant mind in general, but he's a great communicator, and I think that's what we as performers, as artists, are trying to be, are great communicators. I've never thought of myself as a great communicator in that way, because I think I grew up so shy and um, reserved. But clearly, you know, as I've gone on, like with this performance career, there's something in me that loves to communicate, whether it's someone else's words or my own words. If there's if there's something I'm doing, like I don't know, a speech or something talking about someone else, I do enjoy that. And um, so yeah, it's certainly not something a road I ever thought I would go down growing up. It just did not seem like a good fit, and yet here I am. So go figure. It's why when I see kind of younger people like going into performance, or I've taught class at the college level. I taught a class at University of Utah this last semester, and and there's some who are a little further along than others in the class, and and part of you can't help but assess like who might have a chance, and I had to like let go of that. I like who might do well, and
Yeah.
and who might have a harder time. And I quickly had to like dispel myself of that, because I was like at 18, 19 years old, I had zero training and zero ability, and my voice didn't even have vibrato at that point in my life. And I was like, who am I to say who might? So much can happen in those 4 years of college, or even the next 10 years. I grew 15 years, I grew so much just vocally, artistically, as an actor. So I hesitate to like judge people at all, especially in earlier years. I just there's so much room for growth, and um, so anyway, I forget what the original question was. I know about teachers, so but anyway, that's a little bit about maybe some of my musings on teaching and whatnot. So
Well, that's kind of a perfect segue because I was gonna ask you what it is like for you to teach acting. Do you follow like a certain I don't know the question that I guess most people would ask is if you follow a certain theatrical pedagogy, but do you have free reign when it comes to curriculum or like do you just get to come in and like what's that like for you?
yeah, it's a good question, and maybe maybe uh, not a divisive question, but people, I don't know, people sometimes can feel very strongly in
Yeah.
this technique versus that technique, and what I all I know is my own experience.
Hmm.
And I mean, in undergrad, when I started taking some of those acting classes, we started with they were teaching kind of the Uta Hagen substitution method,
Hmm.
which I didn't fully understand until later with Craig Cornelia. But I found for me to be the most, I guess if I were to pick one like general idea, that would kind of be what I would encompass. But in grad school it was kind of like a potpourri of different techniques, and I just kind of picked and choose what worked for me.
Hmm.
And looking back, at the end of our 3 year program in grad school, we all had to do a thesis project, and you could either write a paper or do like a performance, like a one person performance of some work or whatever. And I decided to write my own,
Yeah.
and it was this very very autobiographical series of monologues about a relationship that I had recently gone through, and I incorporated some Rufus Wainwright music, if you know Rufus. And I incorporated a few of his songs within it. But so in so many ways it was this interesting, it's like kind of subconscious way of going, oh no, like write what you know, and find a material that you can you know relate with. So I mean, obviously I wrote material that, I mean, it wasn't an exact. There was a lot of autobiographical things, but it wasn't like exactly just writing exactly what happened. But it certainly was a way to realize, oh, like I can just be me, and that's interesting. Because a lot of people really, I remember just like kind of being surprised by how many people were kind of taken with what I wrote, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like people liked it, and I was just kind of like being myself, and that kind of felt like some of my best acting I'd ever done, and so maybe subconsciously I realized like, whoa, like being myself is enough. And then I went and saw, to kind of not to maybe this is a bit of a good transition because I'm in this show Parade right now, written by Jason Rower Brown. But a very big moment for me was when I went and saw the original production of Last 5 Years off Broadway.
Hmm.
I was in New York with this satellite program through UC Irvine, my grad school. We all went to New York for a month and saw a bunch of shows and took classes, and at the time, Last 5 Years was just finishing its off Broadway run, and I went and saw it, and Norbert Leo Butz was just, I had never seen anyone be so relaxed, or themselves, or what seemingly themselves, or just real on stage singing musical theater.
Yeah.
It was like he was just sitting there breathing, like talking to his buddies, like, and I was like, whoa, that's different, like that's cool. I mean, musical theater, for better for worse, has a lot of cliches attached to it, and the jazz hands and the overacting and the big melodramatic plot lines and whatever, and there's some truth to that, of course, but that has shifted obviously a lot in the last couple decades, few decades. Um, I think audiences demand just a more authentic performance, more lifelike story plot, like storytelling. I mean, I think that those big, song and dance shows are wonderfully entertaining, and there's plenty of room for those too. But seeing the last 5 years again about this like relationship that for Jason Robert Brown was very autobiographical, and seeing this guy just kind of play this this real human being singing songs, and it looked like he was just talking and breathing, and like it's like when you see Shakespeare and it doesn't sound like Shakespeare anymore, it just
Yeah.
sounds like someone talking, and you're like, how do they do that? And um, it was the same with this experience, seeing that show, and another formative moment to be like, oh, that's how you do this now. That can be done. I would like to perform like that.
Yeah.
And Craig Carnelia really really helped with kind of that, uh, getting me to get more comfortable with myself and reveal myself, or what that even means. I mean, I think it's so hard to even understand. First, you got to even understand, like, who am I? I mean, like, some people, I don't know who, I've always been jealous of these people. They just seem to be so assured of
Yeah.
themselves. Like,
Hmm.
I just know who I am and this is what I believe. And I'm like, wow, good for you. Like, I have no idea who I am. I don't know. That way looks kind of interesting. That way looks kind of interesting. I don't know. Like, and maybe that's what makes me, maybe that's helpful for me as an artist. I certainly think so. But it can also be hard to be like, just be yourself. I'm like, I don't know, I'm this way to these people, and I'm this way to these people, and there's something interesting in analyzing that too. Like, we're always kind of performing in a sense, depending on what crowd we're hanging out with, or the way I behave, in my mom's church is different than the way I hang out with, my buddies at the bar, on the
Yeah.
weekend. It's just, we have different sides of ourselves, and that's useful to understand as a performer as well. So, uh, it's, anyways, gosh, I feel like I keep going way off tangent, but as far as the way I teach, I mean, I think all of what I've just said is
Yeah.
probably is in what I would communicate to students. I always say this. I think the most important thing you can do as a performer, especially as a musical theater performer, because I think that there's this idea of just musical theater people just being so into musical theater, and they know everything that's going on Broadway, and who's performing this and who's doing that, and watching all the musicals and the things, and 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 that's I'm not so great about that stuff, and that's probably helpful if I were more, but I think even more useful is to just get out into the world away from musical theater and just go live life. Go fall in love with someone. Go fall out of love with someone. Go make some new friends. Go explore the world. Travel. Go to museums and stay up all night, and just have these experiences that that just kind of extend your branches into the world and give you more life experience to draw from, and helps you empathize, I think, with other people more. I
Hmm.
think it was Mark Twain who said, uh, prejudice. Oh gosh, I'm going to totally screw this up, but something about how basically traveling is like an antidote to prejudice,
Hmm.
and I'm a huge travel junkie, and I just think the more people you meet, cultures you meet, and um, you realize we certainly are. This is going to sound quite cliche, but we are all more connected than we are, divided, I think, And so understanding the human experience is obviously, maybe not obviously, but is so important as a performer who's going to regurgitate that human experience on stage or wherever it might be. So.
In terms of acting, storytelling, humanity, and revealing your true soul while acting, um, can you talk to me a bit about playing real people and bringing yourself as a human into that as well?
Yeah, it's I think there's difference between an impersonation and an interpretation.
Hmm.
And so there are certainly, I mean, I think there's certainly maybe some movies or shows even where people are have to do an impersonation of the real life person. Um, just want to get it like spot on exact. I've never had to do something quite like that. I'm happy
Yeah.
to say because I think that's probably I think it's a real skill set in that. I'm kind of amazed at people who can do that. But for me, it's always going to be an interpretation. Doing Parade right now, I'm playing a real life person. Hugh Dorsey. But people don't really have like a 99.999% of the world probably has no idea who Hugh Dorsey is, and so I mean my job as the actor is to help with the overall storytelling of the show,
Mhm.
and for me it's an interpretation, and certainly we do a lot of research into who this person was in real life and the time and place and history of what this person lived through is all super valuable. But in the end of the day, what you have is the script and the story that you're telling. And we're not doing a documentary on stage or a reenactment. We're doing an interpretation of that history, and so I just feel a lot of leeway in my way into that character. Um, so so yeah, this is my way into Dorsey, and he's not a great person in history. He has a lot of flaws and did a lot of terrible things in the name of justice, really in causing injustice. But there's things you got to think about, like what's my way into this person who, but after the show, people always say, "Oh, I really didn't like you," and you're like, "Well, good, then I did something right," or I even get the question like, "How do you play someone like that?" And I find that always an unusual question. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not doing the things that this person did. I'm merely a storyteller. So, um, in support, I think of what is in the end, a really beautiful, powerful, challenging story that needs to be told and gets people thinking and hopefully ultimately into action about how they can maybe support fight against the injustices of this world. So but in that sense, I mean, so I just play him. I don't need to worry about any of that. I just play the circumstances given to him, and I think as someone, Hugh Dorsey, who's really who's an ambitious character and trying to get ahead of the world, and I think ultimately is in his mind is trying to make his community safer
Yeah.
or more secure in what he's doing. I mean, it's a very backwards thing, but that is the goal, and so wouldn't I want to protect my family from perceived harms, dangers? Of course I would. Maybe those dangers and harms are much different than what Dorsey's perceived dangers and harms are. But I can certainly get behind that idea that I will do anything to protect my family, my community. And as he does well, he enjoys it, and so I really enjoy playing Dorsey, because he's enjoying what he's doing, and it's quite a fun character to play. Uh, but at the end of the day, I certainly find my own way into it, and that's fun. So, but it's all in support of the story, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely I'd say a disconnect I've seen with many shows where people have to play similar like sort of characters where people say how do you how do you play that person who's done that? And of course, we talked about it after I saw the show. But you also talked about it I think when you went on KSTP about how from the audience perspective he's a bad guy, but you as an actor have to empathize and see him as a human being so that you can obviously play authentic and real like perception of an actual character and because he's an actual person too as well.
Yeah, and and so in that way, I think it's helpful too to not think of him as the villain at all, and because that can be a real trap for actors too. Like, oh, I'm going to play him evil, whatever that means, or super mean, or what, it's just, I don't think is what he's trying to do. He's merely trying to achieve the goals that get him the outcome that he'd like to have happen. And so he's he's best friends with the people. In my mind, he has a wife and kids and friends and a community that he cares about, and a state and city that he loves. We sing about the old red hills of Georgia, and a sense of real pride. And I think he loves these things, and I think the best compliment I get is like, oh, we really we really wanted to not like you, but there was something, but they kind of understood. It was almost like they understood, like they saw him as a human being. They
Yeah.
just didn't see him as this like black and white, he's just pure evil character, which I don't know if there are that many of those types of real humans in the world. Maybe I think there probably have been some in history, but most of the time people are just acting in their best interests and trying to protect the things that they care about. And from that perspective, I think we can find our way into to most any character. So,
Hmm. Before I do get into Parade here, because that was a great transition, I wanted to go back a little further to something you said just out of personal curiosity. I know you talked about that show that you wrote. I'm wondering if you ever have a desire to create more original work or collaborative written work with anyone in the future. Is that something that you find yourself interested in?
oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I hem and haw and sigh because I do think about that, and I've probably started like a half dozen to a dozen projects, and I'm unfortunately I haven't had the self-discipline to keep going, and life gets busy or whatever, and um it's something that's always been on my mind. I do. I have a couple kind of, autobiographical kind of ideas that I would love to put down on paper, if not just to perform, just to have for myself as like a remembrance of these times in my life that were powerful to me. Maybe they turn into something of a show, or maybe they don't. But yeah, I really enjoyed that project in grad school. That I've always wanted to do that again, and I mean, I could just sit here and just be like, just just didn't do it, and I don't know what that says or means. Maybe I'm just don't have the writer's mentality or whatever, because it is a very lonely kind of arduous process. I think it just takes practice. I mean, it's just you just got to sit down and do it every day, I think. I mean, I can go to the gym every day, but God forbid I can like sit down and write for like an hour a day. I don't know why it's so hard for me. I'm sure there's some kind of I know there's some kind of fear about it holding me back of like, I'm not really a writer. I can't do this. Like, those people are writers. Those people are really good. Mine would just be nonsense and, you know, it would be like remedial kind of writing or what, I just tear myself down, and something I do for a lot of things in my life, which is not a great trait of mine either, that I'm getting better at. But turning off that critic is, I mean, I think a lot of us struggle with that. And I'm sure it's the same as, I mean, I had that as an actor all the time of just like, people can't really think that I'm actually decent in this, or go into an audition and think like they're actually going to like me, or they're going to see right through me. I mean, that imposter syndrome. I don't know if I've met any actor who doesn't admit to having a bit of an syndrome. I mean, I've heard like some of the greatest actors of all time admit they have imposter syndromes. Like they're going to be found out that they're not a very good actor, and I'm just like, I mean, it's wild to hear, and comforting at the same time to be like, oh, like we all have this thing, so maybe I'm not as bad as I think. But so it is a confusing thing. But that critic really gets in the way of me writing. I mean, I immediately start writing and just like listen to myself, write a sentence and be like, oh, that sentence sounds terrible, you know. But maybe hopefully, knock on wood, someday I'll just push through that and get at least a first draft done of something, because I do find it really satisfying, and I think everyone should do that. I think it's just therapeutic to get stuff down on paper anyway, thoughts, feelings, your life, a journal, like the artist way, which I've done before, has you do like these morning pages where you just kind of flush out the thoughts in the morning of your mind, and thought that was really useful. And so yeah, writing is really valuable and something I wish I would do more of, but uh, but nothing concrete at the moment. So
What's your dream collaboration? Who would you love to work on this hypothetical, not real yet project in the future? Do you have any people that you'd love to work with?
oh my gosh, I mean, so many people. I mean, I've said this before. I just have these real pinch me moments of my career, of people I've worked with, and um, it's, I feel wildly lucky in my career to have worked with my childhood heroes. I remember the first time in grad school, a friend handed me a burned CD of this new composer song cycle called Songs for New World by Jason Robert Brown, and listened to it and was just blown away by this new sound and voice in musical theater. And I was like, that is what musical theater should be now. And here I am, having done two Jason Robert Brown national tours, and um, Michael John LaChiusa, and directors Rachel Chavkin and Michael Arden and Bart Scher, just these great theater minds that that I just that you defer to and try to learn from, and uh, that you're just so excited to collaborate with. I don't know if I could single anyone out in particular. Oh gosh. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've always been interested in like just like new voices of like who could write it the next great musical, or some of these kind of, because coming from like bands and punk music and pop, and like growing up with music in general, like and we see these jukebox musicals, which can be fun and effective at times, and sometimes not as effective. But seeing someone like Billy Joel, who Jason Robert Brown, I think, admittedly was influenced a lot by, or Ben Folds, or I think he could write a great musical. I mean, even he, obviously, he's not so young anymore, but like, so I don't know. As I've gotten older, I'm not sure who the next great voices are going to be, but it is exciting because I think it's just musical theater. Just I think seems to be getting more and more relatable. I think the music gets more relatable. The acting, the storytelling gets more relatable. It's almost gets more cinematic in like that it really draws you in, and it's not just like coming at you as a big, you know, production. And those are super fun, and I love those kinds of shows, but I also love the ones that just really draw you in, and it's like you're watching a movie or a play to music that that has like real authenticity to it. So I don't know. I mean, that's what I've always been connected to the most, and kind of where my career is headed. I haven't done a lot of those kind of big song and dance shows, probably mostly just because I'm not a very good dancer. But I've always kind of leaned into the more kind of darker, dramatic, shows, which has been thrilling. So somewhere in there lies the answer. Those types of writers, directors. Um, but I don't know. I haven't. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think I would just be thrilled with anyone to say yes to collaborate with me. Like, I was like, you wouldn't possibly do that, would you? And like, if someone said yes, it'd be like, wow, that's cool. So we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question though.
Can't remember what interview it was, but you had given an answer that somebody had asked you your dream role. And I know you've talked about Sweeney Todd, but you also said something which I love about how you think maybe your dream role hasn't even been written yet, and you've talked about new voices in theater, and I think that's such a great a thought of like who knows who will write the next awesome thing, and like your dream role could just like be created and you wouldn't like it could become your dream because there's so many new voices out there now and who knows.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, like, I mean, experience that I had was with Lempicka, that was a show that just came out of nowhere, and was a show I like immediately fell in love with, and followed that journey for, like 8 years. Was with that show for quite a while, and it was a very fulfilling artistic journey, and um so like you never know, and you just kind of get smacked in the face like, whoa, what is this? That's really that's kind of the most exciting, like hearing that first Jason Robert Brown song, or that first Lempicka song, or something new, so that is exciting. I think, again, just from my own experience, my wife Kate Reinders and I, we I mean, the truth of it is there aren't as many roles as you get older, and for whatever I don't. I mean, I do know why that is. I mean, I think there's something more exciting in the storytelling of youth and adventure and coming of age and finding yourself, and a lot of stories are that, the birth of a nation, Hamilton, and so but but kind of like I think it would be so interesting to find more stories about that, those kind of middle later years of the questions that arise of, what has my life been about, parenting, getting old, what is the second half of my life, the questions that I'm starting to have, and they're really powerful questions that we all struggle with, and for whatever reason there's not as many shows about that, and maybe they just wouldn't sell tickets, but I kind of feel like they would because
I think they
I
would.
mean, for better for worse, like an older generation are a lot of these ticket buyers, and that love to come to the theater. So we'll see. I'll just throw that out into the universe that it would be fun to see some more like, you know, midlife crisis musicals, or parenting musicals, or you know, getting closer to senior citizen age musicals. That would be interesting to me, obviously, because that means there would be some more roles for me out there, I guess, too. So, yeah.
I'll ask you about Lempicka before I switch to Parade since you mentioned it. And you've often described, and I again, you other people have pronounced it wrong. I could also pronounce it wrong. Your character's name, Tadeusz. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but
Do it.
uh I
There
think
you go. Perfect.
yeah, I think you described him as a man stuck in time, and you compared that to this concept of growing older, and if people will change with like, or if they'll be stuck in sort of this thing. And it is a very unique show, and you were with the show for so long. Do you have any like favorite memories or stories that stick out to you from your time with the show?
Um, yeah. I, you know, I, I really loved that show because I thought it was such an authentic telling of a messy marriage.
Hmm.
It was these two people who loved each other so much, this husband and wife, and went through some really traumatic experiences. I mean, nothing that I've gone through. I mean, escaping, the Bolshevik Revolution and going through, World War I into World War II and being destitute in Paris and trying to create a life again and parent a child, and they were very flawed people, and but stuck with each other for a long time through it all, because they had this bond and this love for each other. And I mean, just the concept of there's romantic love and then there's familial love, and I don't know if familial is right, but family love, and they are different. And I like when I mean, as a parent married with with a child, like raising that child just can either drive you apart or bring you together or both. And this story in Lempicka, this couple, the wife is going off and having an affair with her female muse, and ultimately the husband is going off and having his experiences with other people, and yet no one can understand each other the way they understand each other. Like no one knows you better than your husband or your wife,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. And I loved that so much about the show. So I really tried to hold on to that in the show. Um, I wish it had lasted longer on Broadway to tell that story. I think the fans really focused on the kind of the Lempicka Rafaela Muse story, but for me, like what was so interesting was the marriage, and I felt like a lot of people, and I think the queer storytelling in the show was extremely important. But just for me, obviously playing Tadeusz, like focused on that part of the story, and knowing and going through that kind of in my life as well, and knowing everyone says how hard marriage is. I just thought that was a really really beautiful kind of relationship that they had built there too, and I loved really exploring it and would have loved to have explored it more, So yeah.
Mm. Sort of connected to multiple shows you've done. But you said that playing someone that's still out there in the world, like Kevin, obviously gives you a greater responsibility. While there was liberties you had to take when playing, Tadeusz, and playing someone who's no longer living, such as, who Hugh Dorsey. Can you talk to me a bit about how your process differs when you have to take liberties like that versus playing someone like Kevin who you actually got to meet and talk to and everything, which is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I don't know if I approach the material any differently. I think I think what happens is you just have a greater, like, it's just always on your mind a little bit, like, oh, this person's still alive. I need, like, in your mind you're a little more aware and careful, but I to just be respectful. Um, but I don't know if that changes the performance. I wonder. Um, I mean, maybe it does in the sense of, like, I mean, playing Kevin, he was he's such a good man. Like, I didn't have to worry about, oh, what's he gonna think of me, like, doing this terrible thing on stage? Because I didn't. Like, he was just a great guy, that I got to play every night and kind of sing his praises and show what a beautiful soul he is. If I was playing, if Hugh Dorsey was still alive and I
Yeah.
was playing him, right, that would be more awkward, and
Yeah.
I would hope it wouldn't. I would hope it wouldn't inhibit my performance, but it might. I would hope that fear of his reaction or his family's reaction or whatever would not get in the way of my performance. But I can't say it. I can't say it wouldn't. So I haven't had that exact experience, but it's certainly an interesting possibility. Yeah.
You've played so many real people throughout your career. Is that something you seek out, or is that just always what ends up coming up for you? Just going through your
I mean,
played so many real people.
yeah. I mean, again, I just pinch myself again. I honestly just try to just keep trying to take the jobs that hire me. I wouldn't say I've been able to be that choosy. I don't. I think you're very lucky if you can be choosy at all in this business.
Yeah.
There are not many things I have turned down. And usually the only things I ever turn down are just because I have something else going on, um, which is lucky to say as well. So I think I mean, there might be something to the fact of, if I'm really drawn to, I hope this isn't true, but if there's a show I really love, like, I mean, I loved Come From Away and I loved
Yeah.
Bridges and I loved Lempicka. I mean, I certainly throw myself into those auditions and work more, that maybe my percentage of success to get those jobs is better, or maybe the shows that I don't like as much, maybe I'm not trying as hard on. I don't know, maybe, but I'm just trying to get work, and pay the bills. And luckily, I have a nice list of shows that I will look at from time to time and just, like, wow, how lucky am I that I got to do those shows. So yeah, what can I say? I've just gotten a good lucky roll of the dice, I think. So yeah.
I know you saw Come From Away before you were in it, and you fell in love with it. Were you able to see Parade before joining? Was that something you were able to see?
Yeah, exactly. I saw it when I was in New York doing Lempicka,
Timer
and I
timer
just
came up again.
what's that?
The timer came up again. We'll fix it in a minute. You keep answering that question.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. It's we got 10 minutes. Yeah, I saw it in New York. It was the first time I saw any production of Parade, this revival, and I was just yeah, I was just so taken with the storytelling and the simplicity of it. You know, it's the one set, doesn't change really. It really focuses in on the characters and the storytelling and the music spectacular. Uh, and yeah, and you know, and you see shows and you're just like, oh God, I'd love to do that show someday. So I just reached out to Michael when the tour came up, and I was like, you know, I just like to throw my hat in the ring for the show, and luckily I had a good relationship with Michael, and eventually got the part, and so there are certainly shows like you go after, you know, when Come From Away came up, I really wanted it, and when Bridges came up, I really wanted it, and so and you know, I mean, at the same time, there are a lot of shows that have come up that I really wanted it and didn't get, you know, sometimes didn't even get a call back, you know, and so that happens too, and so you know, we just get to see the ones that I got, but there are probably 10 times as many shows that I would have liked to have gotten that I didn't get, so you know, that's part of the deal.
You acted with Michael Arden in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and you've said that he's the most wonderful and thoughtful director and person you could ask for. Tell me a bit more about what it's like working with him again, but in a different vein with him directing now.
Yeah, you can just, you know, you when you get to know Michael, like he's just a very kind person, you know. I think he just has a lot of empathy for people and the world, and I think that's probably what makes him a really good actor and director is he just has that natural curiosity and empathy for people, and um, there's nothing. He knows how to control a room without bombast or fear,
Mm.
and he just commands with respect and compassion. And so when Michael starts talking, you just want to listen, you know, because he's probably going to have something wonderful to say, and so I love that kind of dynamic where he doesn't have to like yell at you to listen or to make you, you know, really understand. You know, you know he's brilliant as a theater creator. You know he's a good person. You know he understands actors because he's an incredible actor. I don't know which one he's better at, as a performer or as a director. I mean, he's equally sensational, and so that's wild. So he understands actors. Um, and so yeah, you just trust him, and all of that just builds trust, and that he's looking out for you and he's looking out for the show, and he wants everyone to do well, and he wants the show to do well. I mean, sometimes you can feel like it's ego, like they're trying to create their show, and he deserves all of the credit for what he's done, but like there's a sense of like we're doing this together, you know, this is a collaboration, you know. His set designer Dane is one of his childhood friends, you know, and they've been worked for years and years, and you just realize he has all these people that he works with, not who just like work for him. He works with them, you know, and I think that's an important distinction, you know, in the way of creating a company. So
You've talked about how proud you are to be bringing this show around the country and such an important and powerful show. Are there any specific audience reactions that have stuck with you, like, or specific encounters with people that have stuck with you throughout this tour?
you know, it's a tricky show
Mm.
to do because I think it demands. I've never thought about it this way. I'm just kind of thinking this out, but I think it demands a certain kind of audience member as well, who is willing to come into a show and be challenged. You know, there's so many shows and times that you want to just go into a see a show that just takes you away for a while, you know, just takes, you know, throw your cares away and go see this beautiful piece of entertainment that makes you feel good. Um and that's a beautiful thing that theater can do as well, but this show does not do that. You know, it demands your attention. It demands discomfort. And so I only bring that up because like one of the more interesting facets of doing the show with the audience is the moments of applause. You know, it's just such an odd show to clap for.
Yeah.
There are a few moments in the show that I think audience members can easily clap for. You know, there's this beautiful story between a husband and a wife that has some beautiful moments of love and connection that I think when songs that are easy to clap for. But even the end of Act One ends with the conviction of Leo Frank and this really discordant, is that a word? Like a moment of the us on stage cheering this moment of injustice and taking Leo and Jim Conley off to prison, and this cakewalk like odd moment, and the music is bizarre and different time signatures happening and keys, and then it's like ends, and on this chyron it says end of Act One, and the audience, I always hear them just be like do we you clap, right? You clap at the end, you clap at intermission, you know, when the act ends, but I'm clapping for what? Like, no, this is a good show, I think, but that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, it's such a really interesting moment to me for the audience to go through every night. And ultimately, by the end of the show, uh, you know, you really feel the appreciation of the audience, and they know they haven't left their cares and worries behind for the last 2 hours or
Yeah.
2.5 hours. You know, they know they're uncomfortable. They know they've watched something important, and they're so appreciative, which feels, you know, that feels good, of course. Um, you know, my dad, when he first came and saw it in San Francisco, and he came out of I saw him at the stage door, and he came out, and the first words out of his mouth were, and he's come and seen all my shows. He loves musicals, loves coming to see me in shows. First sentence out of his mouth was, "Well, that was fun," and you know, and
Yep.
it's true, and yet you could see the kind of the pride in his eyes of like, you know, good on you and being in a show that says that, you
Yeah.
know, and that feels really, and that feels, you know, that certainly feels good, you know, to know that that's happening for people around the country.
You guys performed in Atlanta in April, which was the first time that Parade has performed in Atlanta. And I remember you were telling me after the show that you guys visited the Bremen Museum. What was it like performing the show in Atlanta?
Yeah, it was incredible. You know, it was the biggest theater that we've performed in as well. It's the Fox Theater in Atlanta, which I think is close to 5,000 seats. Most touring houses are maybe 2,500 seats, so it's an enormous theater. Beautifully decorated old
like vaudeville movie house. And so not only is it just packed with people because we only did 1 week there, and when you only do 1 week, all the people have to come during that 1 week. And in Atlanta, where that story is just known by most people in Atlanta, and so yeah, you could just tell they really appreciated having that story told in Atlanta. And listen, we're a divided country, and people who go to the theater are usually probably a little more progressive type people, and so they're coming to see a story that they support in a certain way. Um, and there are certainly people in this country that maybe see the story in a different way, and there's still pushback to that story. It happened in New York. I think there was a neo-Nazi protest outside the Broadway theater one night, and we didn't have anything like that in Atlanta. It was all support and appreciation that I could feel, but doing it there was really special. I and you could tell they just get it. They get some of the jokes. I mean, the next city I think we went and did was Seattle, and even though they appreciated it, you could tell like some of the jokes or takes they didn't have like a firsthand experience to the heat of Atlanta,
Yeah.
the the backwardsness that some of the people can be there. Like Seattle doesn't have like that firsthand experience of that kind of um, culture. So that was a really special place to do it. Of course.
Yeah. You guys are in, I think, Des Moines, Iowa right now. And then
hmm
you're going to Chicago and then Washington, D.C. How are you feeling about the end of the tour? I mean, I know you're going to be performing at the Kennedy Center, which is a whole other thing. But how are you feeling
hmm
about the end of the tour?
I'm I love touring, or I should say, I've loved touring.
Yeah.
It's a little different now with a family at home, but it's so great to travel the country and see the country and bring a show like this around the country to for audiences to see it that normally wouldn't see a show like this. This is not a show that normally tours. So that's felt really good. But it's hard. It's hard being away from home now. My boy is 8, and he's just, when he was younger, maybe it was easier because, he's like, you just tell yourself, "Oh, he's not gonna remember any of this." He remembers things now, and he knows dads have gone, and that's not always, he's not always happy about that, and that's tough. So. But I feel proud to have taken this story around the country, and so going back to the Kennedy Center will be interesting, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have any hot takes on it. I think I'm glad that a show like Parade will be playing the current Kennedy Center in its current form. I think that's probably a good thing. Um, so. Uh, I guess that's good. um, but yeah, we got 5.5 weeks left, and um, any show you do ultimately comes to an end. And uh, I've done this for a while now, and understand that game. But it's always bittersweet. You're such a family on tour, and but then these days I have a family at home. So, yeah, I haven't reflected too much on it yet. I guess I still feel like I have a little bit of time left, but
You
it
don't
is
need to think
approaching
of the end
fast.
yet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you've been on tour quite a few times. Is there anything I think what do you think your biggest takeaway from this specific tour? Do you have any big takeaways that you think you'll carry with you into, I don't know, your next show? I don't know if you'll plan on touring again at some point, but any big takeaways that you'll take away from this?
Um, that's a good question. I think I think a few things that we've actually already touched on. I think the culture of creating a show has shifted or is shifting in that it's a high stress situation to put all this money into creating a piece of art, uh, and there's a lot of pressure and stress that can go into that, and I think there's a way to I think with Michael Arden and the entire team, um, we're such a lovely group of people that it reinforced my belief that you can create art without having to create conflict within your company.
Yeah.
I think there's a collaborative, supportive, uh, compassionate way of lifting each other up while you create a piece, even as uncomfortable as Parade. You know, I mean, it demands everyone come to the table. I think it demands that someone like Michael and the producers cast and put together a company and crew and creative team that are all just naturally good people. That we don't. I think that's shifted too. I think the age of divas and stuff. I mean, and I shouldn't say divas just because, like, devos or whatever the word is for. I mean, they're just as there are difficult people out there, and I don't think it's necessary to create great great works. So that this whole process reinforced that idea, and it's the opposite. I think the more room you give people to be okay, the more they're gonna bring themselves to the table. There was this idea of like poking people or you know hitting, just the bickering or back and forthness of like really getting something out of someone. Like I don't think that's necessary. In that way. I think you can. I'm not articulating it well, but it was just a very positive experience, and I really appreciated that. That is a successful, example of a way to put on a show. Uh, the other, I think personally for me was just playing Dorsey. Uh, it's funny. I think you always feel like a bit of a kid. Like there's always that middle schooler in you that's always like lurking around, going like, I'm still just the scared little, seventh grader, like that nobody realizes that I really am, and that's always true, and I think universal for a lot of people. But doing Dorsey, this is a mature, real life man, middle-aged man that I'm playing, and realizing, oh, that's that's who I am. I mean, there's part of me in that, and that idea that like, oh, I am a father now. Like I am of a certain age now. I am not going to be playing the young romantic perhaps as much anymore. So, and there's a certain, I think there was a certain acceptance and also just excitement that like, oh, like I can play these roles, and I think do them justice, and that's been an interesting kind of little ride for me too. So, we're always evolving, and
and always understanding ourselves more, and uh, and this show has certainly led to some of those discoveries for me as well.
Mhm. I think just this talk of, growth and growing as humans and bringing that into our craft as performers. And I think you've mentioned before of like this struggle with perfectionism, which I also
Mm.
as a performer for deal with. And I guess just as a professional like working actor, how do you grapple with perfectionism and just continuing to grow as a human being with your craft?
Yeah, that's a big one. That is a big one. Perfectionism. For a long time, I tried to perform what was right instead of what was honest. Um, and I still struggle with that. It's hard to kind of in rehearsal find something that works, and then to take a chance and try something different. After you know that works, why don't I just keep doing that? Try something different that may not work. Why would I even attempt that? And it's just for me just taken a long time to understand, well, because I might find something even better, and but that's a scary thing to do, because at the end of the day, it is such a hard business. It's hard to get one of these jobs. It's hard to get another one of these jobs, and we're trying so hard to just get the job that it's hard to not think about, well, what are they looking for to cast, and okay, then what do I need to become or do? And it's just natural to think that way, and I still think there's value in that. I do think there is value in that. You want to know your character, you want to know the tone of the show, and who has done it before. Oh, well, they are looking for that type of person, it seems. And that's all really helpful information. So you might be right or you might not be right for the show. Uh, so you gotta you gotta find the part of yourself that does fit that show, or find the roles that you do fit, and go after those. Of course, like, I'm not going to play, gosh, I don't know, I'm not going to play Tevye, in Fiddler on the Roof, and or whatever it is, but the roles that I can play, like, and okay, what is it about myself that I connect with in those roles, instead of, I'm just going to try to do it like that. And because that there is that perfectionism of, if I'm perfect, I'll get the job.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that even mean? I mean, the concept of perfect is so outrageous anyway. So, and again, I'll just come full circle, because Craig Cornelia was by far the biggest influence on me on this idea of perfection, and letting go of perfection, or using the the using using being a perfectionist as a way into a character, like, oh, this guy's a perfectionist, so he's got, he's neurotic, or what, or he struggles with insecurity or whatever it is. Like, why is he trying so hard to be perfect, instead of just being himself? Like, that's even useful in a sense, but as far as trying to be a perfectionist with the work, it's unless you're like a mathematician, or building a bridge as an engineer that you don't want to collapse. In art, it's just so gooey and gray and hazy, and you just gotta take risks, and hope you're what they're looking for. So it is a big risk, and there's always craft. There's always extending your range of what you can do, and how you do it, and of course in musicals your voice production and your the way you can use your body and your understanding of text and and script and stagecraft and like all those tools you want to keep you want to keep filling your box with as many tools and better tools and even better tools as you can. uh, but at the end of the day, all you got is yourself. And if you're trying to play someone that you're not, ultimately at this level of the game, it shows,
Yeah.
they're gonna see that you're trying to be something you're not, and then it just doesn't work. Like it's just not believable. And we're looking for believability. We're looking to say, oh, I believe what that person says. Is how they feel or what they're doing, and so you're juggling all these things, and it's why the cliche is that a lot of us actors are that we're like have mental health issues or whatever. I don't think that's fair, but it is true. Like we're juggling so many things, and when you are the product,
Hmm.
it's hard to not take it personally. Like I just showed you myself and you said no. Ugh, dagger to the heart. Like it's hard, and but it's what the career demands, and so you got to have the most gooeyest revealing insides, and then you know uh, you got to have a shell that can withstand the rejection as well. So uh, good luck to all you young actors. But it's thrilling, it is thrilling, and it'll build you up and tear you down and all those things. And I do feel like I've been so lucky to live a life of not always immense security, but real human fulfillment, and I think that's special. I mean, sometimes I wish, I had the stable job that could pay the bills and ensure my son's future, and all those things. But and if a time comes where that's what I need to do, then that's totally valid too. So but for now, I've been lucky to kind of go down this little wild ride, and hopefully give to this career that gave so much to me, and broke me out of my shell and helped me find my voice and my way through the world, and realize I'm not alone, and I have something to give, and people react to it and get something out of it, um, and can connect with others. That's not something I was really confident I was going to find when I was a really kind of insecure, kind of insular child. So knowing that that's what theater does for people and what it's done for me, I hope that I can continue to nurture that and uplift that for others, moving forward. I don't know if I know many things that are more important than that. So yeah.
In terms of my own curiosity, um, about just about something you talked about with your process of just like taking risks and 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 putting, again, it is so personal. It feels like putting yourself out there, and that something that I guess that I've wondered or I've been curious about, in relation to my own training, something that I've noticed is just this this feeling of almost feeling comfortable making big choices in the rehearsal process, like initially, because you talked about this almost struggle of making a choice and then it working, and then and then having to make more choices and evolve from that. And I think that I'm curious even about the baseline of that, of just deciding to make a choice, like to make a big choice in the rehearsal process rather than like almost like putting it off until performance and feeling like performance is when I'll really get it. I don't need to, you know? I wonder how do you do that as a performer? How does that work for you?
Well, I'll tell you, not very well. I'm not always the best at like making a big choice. I think I think I don't always find myself so daring in that way. So it's something I've tried to be better about. I mean, what was fun with Dorsey is that he can be such a ridiculous character of sorts. Like he is doing these outrageous things that it gives you a little more permission to be a little more outrageous. Michael said to us, he's like, just go for it, and he's like, dare to, basically dare to fail, dare to have me reel you back in. And I mean, and directors say that a lot. And what can be confusing is that then you'll go and do it, and they'll be like, "Oh no, don't do that," And suddenly you're like, "Oh well, I thought you told me to, try that." And then they're like, "No, no, don't do that." And suddenly you feel very insecure about the choices you're making. And but Michael in particular is so good about that. And there were certainly things I did that he'd be like, "No, don't do that," And you're like, and coming from Michael, I'm just like, okay, yeah, yeah, I won't do that. But like, there are plenty of things I do in the show that I'm not sure that I would have ever thought that I would do to such a degree, and I do them every night, And Michael never said, "Don't do that," and I get to kind of really have some fun with this character. And I know Paul Nolan, who played it before. I know he's this wonderful actor. Um, who played it on Broadway, and I know, not to speak about him, but just to have heard that he's wonderful at making big choices and not afraid of making big choices. And I've seen him on stage, and he is an incredible actor. And to hear some stories about some things that he did that didn't work, maybe, or that maybe they did, they didn't make it into the show, or it wasn't right for the show or whatever. But like that, to hear that it's something he does, and to know what an incredible actor he is, it just gives you confidence to be like, yeah, what am I so afraid of? Like, just go for it. And if it doesn't work, like, then we just won't do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I hope that rehearsal rooms can be more open to that type of work, because I think there has been a time where you do something ridiculous and it just gets shot down, and it's like, and that is so unhelpful, and you just think like, oh, I must be a terrible actor. And no, you're just making a big choice. And I've always said this about everything in life, that mistakes are the biggest opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And I think that's in everything that we do. We make these, I mean, the biggest moments of growth in my life have come out of the darkest moments of my life. And as hard as it is to go through those really big moments of challenge and mistakes and and error, or what a failure, out of it come, you just need, if you choose to learn from it, then lo and behold, you grow and get better. And it's the same in acting, like, oh, that works, but that doesn't. Like, oh, wow. Like when I do it, uh, I can make an outrageous choice, but if it's not rooted in truth, then it doesn't work at all. And then I could do the same kind of choice, but have it like really rooted in myself and truth, and then it works, And so so there's all these kinds of things in play, uh, but it is hard. It is very hard to take that risk, because first and foremost, you just want the job. And if you think you're going to do something wrong that's going to lose you the job, then I get it. Like, it's hard to take that risk. But so many times you hear about the people who came in with a really risky choice and that's what got them the job.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, if it's rooted in truth, I've heard this before too, truth has no size.
Hmm.
And I think that's it's a really important lesson, something just very simple that's rooted in truth. It can be so powerful, and something if it's just like takes over the whole stage. But if it's rooted in truth, then both are, for lack of a better word, are true. So um, it's something to keep in mind. And maybe you have a great idea and you're like, okay, now how can I make it an honest idea? How can I make it an honest choice? And maybe that's a place to start. So I'm still learning how to do it myself, so I don't have the answers, but it is an important part of the process.
This concept of mistakes, and you put it beautifully. I read you said somewhere that authenticity is always correct, as you just said, with finding a choice and but making it true, you know? Do you have any specific stories or moments that stick out to you when things didn't go as expected, but that was for the better for you?
Oh, I'm sure I do, if I can think of one. Um, yeah, I have a very I guess the example that comes to mind is in the show. I have there's a very uncomfortable scene. I have an interrogation scene with the character Newt, where I'm really badgering as the attorney, this black man, and I have to really get in his face and basically try to scare him into a false confession. And uh, and you know and and Michael was just like telling me, just like, go for it, go for it, go for it. And that's really hard for me. Anger is kind of hard for me to play sometimes on stage. I get really insecure about it. And um but there were just like slighted. I think I bring up the example because I just kind of started trying new things. And eventually, like, a choice, a common choice, like, is that I do just, like, I slam the table at some point. And I didn't do it initially for a while. Um, and even into our opening, I think I'm not sure if I was exactly doing that, but at some point just came out of me to just like slam this table at one point. And it was just so effective. And it also felt true too. Like, I did it instinctually instead of like, I'm gonna bang the table this time. Like, I just kind of let my frustration with this moment kind of come out, and it came out in this kind of physical action. And I was like, whoa. And afterwards I was like, wow, that felt really effective. And I remember, I mean, I think something to the effect of like, I connect because Robert, who plays Newt, and we always connect because it is, just he's an awesome guy. And so we always just connect, like, you're cool, we're cool. Like, I have to do this terrible thing to you, like, we're cool, right? And like afterwards, he was like, that was awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I think that was really effective. And so just moments like that where you just take a chance, and maybe it works and it doesn't. And the beautiful thing about theater is you just get to do it again the next day, or the next rehearsal, or the next take, or the whatever. And especially on tour, you get, if something doesn't work and you do something a little differently, you get to do it. Well, I'll try something else tomorrow. And that's really nice about theater. Yeah, you experiment. Uh, and I know Michael would tell me about some things that happened in the previous process, like on Broadway, like some, uh, he's like, you really go for it, but someone tried this and don't go that far, like, so there are parameters at times. And so you're always juggling and you're trying not to be aware of yourself as you're doing it, but that's tricky too. So, but that's maybe a decent example, I guess.
One of my favorite questions to ask
Oh,
people
great.
is if you could give your past self a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, it's tough, right? Because I heard this bit of data about people that if you asked people if they would change places with another person, or would they? And the vast majority, it's like something great, like 90% of people would say no.
Yeah.
Even no matter what situation they're in, socioeconomic situation they're in, they prefer to stay with the situation that they have. And so I guess the question is tricky because everything has brought me to this point, and I do feel very lucky to be in the situation and live the life that I have. I mean, I feel like a common answer to that question is always don't be so hard on yourself, and I think that would be nice to not be so hard on myself when I was younger. Um, so I think. I think I would just go back and tell myself, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
There's just so many times I think growing up that I just felt like I don't feel okay. Like there's something wrong with me, like what's gonna happen? Like I don't like myself. I feel very ashamed of myself at this moment. And just to like go back and be like, you're gonna be okay. Like just there's gonna be some hard times, but like you're gonna get through it and you're gonna be okay. I think maybe that would have taken a little bit of the panic away. So, and that would have been nice.
What about people going into this industry or even just like wanting to start acting? What advice would you give to them?
I would say I think I think I think I could say a few things, but I'm trying to think. I've answered this question before, and I guess there's a few things I would say is that don't make sure make sure you're enjoying it. You know, you don't want to lose that sense of like if it becomes just work, then just do something else. Like there's a lot of better careers to go in that are just work that you can make better money at and probably have better hours at and better family life at. And so if it's just work, then you should probably find something else. But if it's really something that just moves you and you can't do anything else, like they say, then I guess keep doing it. Um, but the other thing I think I would just say is that in that sense, it is just like any other job in the sense that you just always want to be getting better. Like I think it's, I think there is this mystery about acting that like anyone can do it and maybe anyone can, but there is real craft and work and growth and um, tools that you can learn to make yourself better. There was always more knowledge and ability to be had. So it's not like you just go to college and you get your training and then you go to New York and like I've had my training, I'm done, let's do it. It's like no, then like the training has only begun. And so just keep learning, keep trying to become a better actor, a more authentic actor, a more authentic human being, a better person. I think just the relationships you make in the business are so important. To my wife, Kate, maybe I think she heard this somewhere, but I heard it from her. She said, if I get this right, I think when you reach the professional level, everyone is good, right? And then and then beyond that, the next level is everyone is hardworking.
Yeah.
Like then the ones who are good and then hardworking, they're gonna rise above that. And then above that is if you're a pleasure to work with. So if you got to get good, and then you got to be a hard worker, and then you just got to be a a decent, good person to work with, and I think that's a really good three tiers of way to think about how to make yourself valuable in the business. So,
I think that's great advice, and I also think that's a great place to wrap up. Um,
hmm,
I just want to thank you so much for answering all my questions. I think that
hmm.
you made really
Oh, it's a pleasure.
yeah, it was awesome to talk to you here.